what's up, peeps? It's LA Knight, and I am back with my Patreon intro podcast. I was gonna say video, but it's not a video. It's a podcast. Um, Basically, this is just a real quick thing explaining kind of who I am and why I'm on Patreon and what I do on all of the creative websites that I have linked in the doobly-doo down below. The reason this video podcast is going on YouTube is because I don't actually know how to put a video on Patreon without it first being on YouTube. I am still learning how to use Patreon. So, who am I? My real name is Catherine, but I don't use that name, actually at all. The only people who call me Catherine are, when in legal situations, and my parents. And my siblings. So, immediate family and, for legal reasons, in legal situations. And then, I'm trying to think if anyone else does it. Oh, and then I have two friends who live in my city that I've known since I was 4 years old, and so they call me Catherine. And that's it. All my other friends, who weren't at my job and stuff, everyone I went to high school with, they call me by my nickname, and then on the internet, I am known as LA Knight. And I've actually been writing under the name LA Knight since I was 17? Holy crap. No, 16. Holy crap. That's almost 13 years. I got the idea for the name LA Knight actually because so I actually wrote my first book. I'm a writer. I wrote my first novel-length book. It was 60,000 words when I was 8. But it was so bad. Oh, it was so bad and so unrealistic. But it was in my 3rd grade class. We had this Belle work thing, and so we had to write. They would give us a prompt every day, and we'd have to write about it. And I went because I'm extra. I went the little extra mile and linked all the stories so they were all about the same group of characters. And then at the end of 3rd grade, when I had typed up everything on my computer, which took forever because at the time I was not a good enough typist that I could read, have my head turned reading off the page and typing without looking at the keyboard. I can do that now. I've been able to do that since 10th grade, but I can't do it. I couldn't do it then. So that took forever. By the time I was done, it was about 60,000 words. And of course, I didn't know anything about editing. And, at 8 years old, I didn't know a lot of things. So, I wrote a book about this girl who just, randomly flew to a small European principality, got into a royal ball somehow without an invitation, fell in love with the prince, and married him, literally the next day. And then, had lots of weird, crazy adventures. But, so I wrote my first book when I was 8. But I didn't really know that, writing was a job that you could do. And I don't know where I thought books came from. I don't know. I guess I just thought they magically appeared or something. I don't know. Or maybe I thought that, people wrote books for fun and didn't get paid. Maybe that's what I thought. I don't remember now because it was so long ago. But so it never occurred to me, hey, I could actually write books. And maybe also, I had some shit self-esteem when I was a kid. So it never occurred to me that, I could write a book and then do whatever it is that was required to, make it a book. Until I read this book where a teenage girl did that, called Demon in My View by Amelia Atwater Rhodes. And actually Amelia Atwater Rhodes got published when she was 13. Her first book came out when she was 13. I was 11 when that happened. When I read her first book. So she showed me that just by doing that it was possible for somebody my age to do that. And so I guess to honor that, the writer girl in the book that she wrote, the girl from Demon in My View, her pen name was Ash Knight. Ash from fire, and then night nighttime. So I changed it a little bit, and so my pen name was Lady Ash Knight. Knight as in Knigget, Knights of the Round Table, and that turned into LA Knight, because that way it was gender neutral, because at the time I had read somewhere that women should write under gender neutral pseudonyms, and so I was oh, okay, not realizing at the time when I was 11 that was actually bullshit and totally unfair. I just did it, and so I've been writing under. So that's where I got the name from. And I've actually been writing since I was very little. I wrote my first fanfic very badly spelled, very like unrealistic. I had to think about what word I wanted to use. Very unrealistic. In crayon when I was 4. I learned how to read and write when I was 3, but my handwriting and spelling was atrocious. It was for Power Rangers. I wrote my first fanfic for Power Rangers. I was totally had a thing for the Red Ranger, and so I wrote like this big long fanfic, long for a 4-year-old fanfic about the Power Rangers, and in crayon, and it was terrible. And I saved the pages for years, but then my parents made me throw them out because they were like super old. And then and then I wrote my first book when I was original book that was terrible when I was 8, and then like I didn't know that fan fiction was like really a thing that other people did until I was about 12 and the Lord of the Rings came out, and I saw the Lord of the Rings and got into the Lord of the Rings, and then my best friend's sister told me that there was gay fan fiction for Frodo and Sam on the internet. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, let me show you. And so we stayed up until like 4 a.m. with her reading me not the gay fan fiction actually, because she didn't like the gay fan fiction, but she like read me some of the summaries for the fanfics for between Sam and Frodo, and then like she read me a bunch of like crack fics, and that was how I discovered fan fiction like was a thing, and it was pretty cool. And then I got better at writing through fan fiction, although my first few fanfics were so bad, and like because when you're starting, you gotta get good. You're not just born good at writing, unless apparently you're Amelia Atwater Rhodes or Stephen King. But it was just some of them are just bad. And also for the anime, when I was a kid, I thought that the characters in anime were a lot older than they were. So like I wrote an M-rated Beyblade fanfic. And when I wrote it, when I was 13, I was like, okay, these characters are like 17, 18. So this is okay. And then, like 10 years later, somebody left a review and was like, you realize these guys are like 12, right? And I'm like, what? Oh. And I actually said in the fanfics that these characters were like 17, 18. So like, even if canonically they're 12, in the fanfic they're not. But still, it was just weird to think about that. So I'm not like a creep in that way. I was not trying to be creepy on purpose. I just legitimately thought they were 18. So that's like how I got into writing, and then I got into book reviews because like I've always loved talking about books. And then when I met Lorien Kitty Books when I was in 10th grade, so yeah, we've known each other a long time. When I met her when I was in 10th grade, she and I could talk about books like 5 ever. It was so nice. But she was like the only person I could talk to about books because most of the people I hung out with didn't like to read. Or my grandma. I could talk to my grandma, but she and I didn't read all the same things. Although we did read the Anita Blake series together, and it was a reread for her, but we read the Anita Blake series together, and we read the In Death series together, and that was actually really cool because, like, my grandma is why my mom really liked to read, and my mom really liking to read is why I, like, was raised to really like to read. But because Lorien was the only person I could talk to about books, and she also didn't have access to a lot of books, because she didn't have as much money as I did growing up, and she also, I found out semi-recently, she didn't know where our high school library was, which I didn't know, or else I would have, like, shown it to her so she could go and check out the books there, but I had no idea. And so, like, her biggest exposure to books was me, and so that was, like, not enough people. And then I could talk to my sister, but we had so many other things that we needed to talk about, because she was, like, really, like, my big mentor in life, so we had to talk about, like, life shit all the time. And then Lorien was like, you gotta see this video, because I found somebody who likes to talk about books as much as you do. And I was like, wait, what, really? And she showed me Poland Bananas books, Christine Riccio, and I was like, oh my god. And then I found out that this was, like, actually a thing. And she was like, I want to do this. I'm like, I want to do this too. And so we started, but I'm ugly and also not very photogenic. Don't let the pictures in my banner fool you. Most of those were professionally taken. Or they look bad. One of the two. And also I don't have a camera. So all I have is, a recording software on my computer, so I can't really do videos. Also, like a lot of the challenges, like the searching challenges and stuff, I'm not physically fit enough to do them anymore. Um, so because of that, I am doing podcasts instead of videos. It's just easier. When you do videos, you have to put on makeup, and you have to get dressed in really nice clothes, which I don't have makeup, and also I'm really bad at makeup. But if you don't put on makeup when you are doing a video, especially if you look like me, you either look like you're dying or you look like you're sick. Or you look like a zombie. One of the three. And so that's why in what few actual videos there are of me, I'm wearing really dark evening makeup for the most part, because then I show up really well on the camera. But I don't want to do that because it's so much work. I have so many things I have to do every day that I don't have time to put makeup on. And so there's that. So that's why I'm doing podcasts now. And then I moved to Patreon because I've been on YouTube actually for a while. I have 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is a really big deal, but most of them are not for my book reviews. Most of them are actually because when I was 18, I did a series of slideshows to Mormon church music, because I'm Mormon, as part of a youth project that I had to do, and a whole bunch of people liked them, and so that's where most of my subscribers came from. And they probably are not listening to my podcast because I cuss a lot in my podcast, and most Mormons are not here for that. So I moved to Patreon because I lost my job. I was recently fired, and by recently I mean at the end of September. I was recently fired from my job for discriminatory reasons. They took exception to the fact that I am chronically ill and autistic and have PTSD. This is slowly getting fixed, but there's so many things in the way of that right now. This video, by the way, once that situation changes, I'm going to be redoing this video or podcast, whatever. Anyway, so that's why I'm on Patreon though, is because I lost my job, and my husband and I were talking, and he was like, you do so many creative things, you should really go on Patreon because you have so much that would be available to your patrons, and you have such a huge following on fanfiction.net because I have two really big fanfics on fanfiction.net. One for the Marvel MCU about Loki called Darkness There and Nothing, which I actually have a podcast about, and I will also link the table of contents page below where you can get to all the chapters that are currently available. And I have a Hellboy 2 fanfic, because the ending of Hellboy 2 is shit. Ugh, I hate the ending of Hellboy 2. Oh my god, I could rant about that for days. But I have a Hellboy 2 fanfic called Once Upon a Time, and I came up with that title before the show Once Upon a Time was even a thing. Just saying. My Hellboy fanfic came out in 2009. Just saying. And he's like, you have so many followers, why don't you put some of your fanfics and stuff on Patreon? So I did. So here I am now on Patreon, and so what I'm doing on Patreon is serializing some of my novels, and because I've written original fiction, and I don't mean the ones that I did when I was 8, because y'all don't want to read that. Also, I don't have them anymore. But the ones that I've written recently, I've written some teen fiction, I've written some adult romances that don't have a lot of sex in them, if any at all, because I'm not really into that kind of romance anymore. I've got short stories on here. I've got book reviews. I've got book tags. I'm going to be posting. People send me questions on my Tumblr about my fanfics, and I will be making podcasts where I read those questions and answer them in the podcast, so you guys can check that out soon once I start doing it. I've got different links to different things on my Etsy. I've got different art things for my different fanfics. I've got some of my fanfics on here. Right now, I've just got my Hellboy fanfic, Once Upon a Time, my Loki fanfic, Darkness There and Nothing, my serialized novel, I Hear the Bones Singing, which is a gay, queer, because it's not just gay people, queer fairy tale urban fantasy. And I've started posting my Winter Soldier fanfic because Bucky Barnes deserves all the love. I've got aesthetic reviews on here, which is where I've got those pictures, and then I review the book in writing. I've got all kinds of things on here. And if you are into that, if you think that I'm funny, if you want to listen to what I have to say, if you want to read my work, or if you just want to take pity on me because I don't have a job, and I am looking, but I don't have a job. If you want to take pity on me for that, follow me on Patreon. The higher your patron tier, the more stuff you get. So that's cool, right? Ooh, I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit. I've had a asthma attack earlier, and so maybe I shouldn't be recording a podcast, but I like doing these. They relax me. Um, so yeah, there's that. So I want to thank you guys for listening, and if you enjoyed what you heard or thought I was interesting or, whatever, like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to check me out on YouTube, Tumblr, Twitter, Pinterest, Patreon, Etsy, fanfiction.net, fictionpress.com, Wattpad, Goodreads, and DeviantArt. Or you can buy me a coffee, and I'll have all of those links below. Thank you so much, and I love you all. Goodbye! Oh, and one last thing I totally forgot. A shout out to my patrons. Chelsea Teeter. I hope I'm pronouncing everybody's names right. Why would I want to pronounce your names wrong? I don't know why I said that. I hope I'm pronouncing everybody's names right. Shout out to my patrons. Chelsea Teeter, Cynthia Sandstrom, Lorien O'Brien, and Whitney Hunt. Thank you guys so much for your support, and I look forward to putting out more stuff that you guys can enjoy. And again, anyone who wants a shout out in the credits, just check me out on Patreon to become a patron. Bye. This time for real, bye.